Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mad Science Lab podcast, brought to you by the combination of the Fantasy Football Universe and the Fantasy Football Advice Network. I am here again today with another 2024 Dynasty Risers and Fallers edition. Today, my guest is Andrew Hall. Andrew, how's it going?
Going well, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Before we get into the fun Risers and Fallers, you want to take a second, do the usual, promote yourself?
Sure thing. Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter at Andrew Hall FF. I still call it Twitter. I'm probably never going to change.
Me too.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about anyway, so why bother? So yeah, find me on Twitter. Obviously, I love chatting it up on there and connecting with people and having stupid arguments about things that don't matter. It's a good distraction from reality. But you can also find me writing it for Fantasy Pros. I write about 3 or 4 articles a month about Dynasty on there. And then obviously a proud member of the DAP Network, the Dynasty Addicts Podcast Network, with the show that I co-host with some of my buddies, the Dynasty Junkies. So find me on there. We're kind of rotating through on the off season, but we usually record every other Thursday right now. And then during the season, we'll get back into every week. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. And I got a lot going on, but man, it's always a good time to make, conversation with you about Dynasty, man.
Yeah, I love it. You going to be at the Expo?
You know it, sir. That's my favorite time of the year.
It is my favorite too as well. And you got through yours in about a minute there. I'm not going to lie. I've recorded one of these. The person took about little under 7 minutes. And I was like, wow, come on, man.
I want to talk about real stuff. Nobody cares about what I'm doing.
I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I'm like, it's a 15-minute show. We don't need to hear 7 minutes of where you produce content. Just say, follow me on Twitter. So
cut to it.
Right into the fun stuff here. The first one is your riser, Geno Smith. He is in his 12th year after that good old 9-year breakout. So I normally list the finishes. This could take a while. He has been QB 20, 26, 51, 55, 55, 274, 255. I need a breath. 77, 40, 5 and 19. Last year, he had 323 completions on 499 attempts, 3,624 passing yards, 20 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Added in 155 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. I do so hate my keep, trade, cut values, but this time of year, I like to see how the general public values them. Mm-hmm. They have him 152nd overall. Fantasy Pros has him at 161, which is interesting because KTC has him valued 9 spots higher. Fantasy Pros has him valued 6 quarterback slots higher at QB 24 as opposed to QB 30 on KTC. That's interesting. Some of the, I know a lot of the guys aren't I don't think I've updated my dynasty rankings, so I'm not too sure how up to date some of these are, but where do you see Geno? What do you have for him?
So I kind of like that QB 24 range, and it's tough. And this time of year, you asked me to pick a riser, and I'm like, I don't want to go with one of the obvious names. I kind of want to go a little deeper. I mean, Dynasty is meant to be, a deeper game. I play in a lot of super flex leagues, of course, so quarterbacks are even more important. And I said, you know what? Let's go with Geno Smith. I really liked what he did last year for a QB2, QB3 kind of person, and someone that you have on your roster to fill in for those bye weeks or injuries, and not someone you're excited to start. But I'll be honest, I was okay with it. Most of the weeks I started him, it ended up being okay. I mean, that's more vibes than stats, but still it was, that QB 24 range. I'm happy with that. And I think this year with the way that offense is lining up with pretty much, the same offensive skill weapons should all be coming back, right? You still got DK, you still got Tyler Lockett, obviously got JSN, the young riser. They should have Kenneth Walker back. Everybody's coming back. I just feel like Geno's going to be the one to benefit the most, right? I think that he's going to be the one that's going to be the most consistent. They are changing coaches, but I'd be shocked if they change a whole lot around that. It was more of it's time for Pete Carroll to move on than Pete Carroll's terrible and needs to move on. So I'm just excited to see what Geno does this year. And I think for Dynasty, he's somebody I'm trying to target on the cheap.
Sorry, I was kid in the background. You know that little Fortnite chat group we're a part of? I get to see messages all the time and think, oh, is anyone getting online? My kid hasn't let me on the Xbox in 6 months. Every night I'm like, oh, they're playing Fortnite. I'm good. Oh, my kid's on Fortnite. I can't get on. I can't do it. So, all right, we'll get back to Geno here. He is in tier 5 of quarterbacks on Fantasy Pros, a tier going from 21 all the way to 33. Just one big messy tier.
Yeah.
And out of the, I think it's 11 options here, there's really only maybe 2 or 3 others that I think are even worth talking about. Like Cousins, I think belongs in the tier with him. Baker, and Stafford. Other than that, I'm not really high on Will Levis. Russell Wilson's dead to me. Derek Carr, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett. Like, I'm pretty sure that even if you don't have Geno at the top of this, he's got to be in the top 3 or 4 out of these 11 or 12 guys. Like Stafford, Baker, Cousins. Nobody else in this range is even close to him. They're all garbage.
Yeah. No, and you got the ghost of Trey Lance, right? Who should be something, but is never going to be anything. And you got Joe Flacco, comeback player of the year in that kind of range. I mean, those are the kind of quarterbacks too, that I think a lot of people this time of year are looking at their lineups and their rosters and everything and trying to figure out what their lineups are going to be. And this is the wrong time of year to do that, right? Like, we don't care about lineups right now. We have literally 6 months before any of this matters. So my logic is always, let's just get value for the cheap. And I think Geno has one of the higher upsides out of that group, which is why I like him a lot as a riser. I think that there is a chance that he survives draft season. I don't think he gets replaced there. I don't think they're going to go get a free agent to replace him. There's just not enough free agent talent really that makes it worth, swapping out. He's about his equivalent. And I just think he's going to go under the radar for a lot of players. And so if you can sneak him for, heck, you might even get him for like a 3rd round pick when rookie drafts are going on. And I think in Superflex leagues, to get what could be a starter, even if it's just for 1 year, for a 3rd round pick, it's better than your 3rd round pick usually is, unless it's Tank Dell or Puka Nacua, which are just striking gold and getting lucky. So, yeah, I mean, I just feel like there's a lot of places Geno's getting disrespected, and I don't know. I kind of like him.
The interesting ones for me are the 2 that are 3 above him at the bottom of tier 4, and it's purely an age argument. Drake May, who we have no idea where he's going, where he'll be drafted, if he's even any good. Yep. And then Bryce Young, and I get he was the number 1 overall pick, but unless you're in a rebuild and you're just hoping Bryce Young's got something, like that's just a hope and a prayer there. He showed nothing in year 1 that even gives you any hope. I don't know. What are your thoughts with those 2, Bryce Young and Drake May?
Personally, I almost picked Bryce Young for this segment. I just think, again, he's getting criminally underrated because of how bad that team is. I don't mind Bryce Young at all. I would rather Bryce over a lot of those guys we talked about before. The question mark for me, of course, at least right now, sitting here in February, right, is where does Drake May land? What kind of offense is he going to play on? The thing is, and I don't know if people talk about this enough. I mean, draft capital matters a lot. He's definitely going to be in the 1st round. Landing spot matters a lot because that's where I think for him especially it's going to matter. If he ends up going to Washington where they're in a full rebuild, that could be kind of rough, like what we saw Bryce Young do last year, right?
New England's not much better at 3.
Well, and I was just going to say, let's say he falls to 3 in New England. Kind of the same story, and they're in a whole start over. Like, all of those teams at the top are scrambling to figure out what they're going to be. There is a chance too, of course, somebody trades up and gets messy in there. We've seen that before, right? That happens a lot in these drafts lately. I mean, what if, and again, I don't think this is going to happen, but what if he ends somewhere like New York Giants, where he's the next heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers, and that's not a place I'd want Drake May to be. That ruins his value. What if he ends up in Atlanta? Sure, that could be great, but let's say they get Ryan Tannehill in free agency, and again, Drake May's the guy waiting in the wings. Like, we have so many question marks about a lot of these teams. It's just not set in stone. So for me, I have a hard time picking a rookie like that over somebody like Geno Smith at this moment. And I also think the price to acquire Drake May is going to be like the 103, 102, even in some drafts. Like if Harrison doesn't go 1st or 2nd, and then you're looking at, like I just said, Geno Smith might be, a 3rd round pick or maybe a 2nd. That draft capital difference in rookie drafts is insane. Why not get the guy for significantly lower cost and take the extra risk and take the upside? That's kind of where I'm at, right? I don't necessarily mind spending high, but I'd sure as heck rather get the discount version for now.
Yeah, especially if you're in a contending team where, okay, you've got, who were the 3 I said? Drake May, Bryce Young, Geno Smith. You're a contender who needs to win this year. I think Geno's the easy choice for this. Like, do you see many scenarios where he's not the best of the 3 in year 1? I think it would be a long shot. But.
I mean, if we're talking this coming year, I want to know. Yeah, I want to know where Drake May lands, and I want to know how things settle out. So again, talk to me in June. I might have a different opinion there, but again, the odds of that happening are 10% in my mind. That Drake May is the answer. I think the other 90% is it's Geno, and I think a lot of, you said it perfectly too. A lot of people are on the age train and they're biased against a 33-year-old Geno Smith when they're looking at a 22-year-old or whatever it is, Bryce Young or Drake May. So I just think a lot of people are age biased, and it happens. It happens. I get it. But when you're looking at guys like Stafford and Baker and Cousins, like those other guys aren't necessarily kids, but they're not old either. And they're producing. They're known quantities. And I mean, honestly, Drake May could be as good as Geno Smith. Why are we taking the risk? Let's just go take Geno and be good to go.
of all the 30-something-year-old quarterbacks to ever play, is there any quarterback who's had less mileage than Geno? He's been on the bench for 8 out of 10 years or something. He's played probably 40 games as a starter in 10 years.
So. Yeah, he's a young 33, right?
Yes, he's sitting on the bench the whole time holding the clipboard, so he shouldn't have much wear and tear on him, but
that's true.
We'll switch over here to your faller. That is Green Bay running back Aaron Jones. He is going into his 8th year. He has been running back 62, 24, 2, 5, 10, 9, and then back down to 37 last year. A lot of injuries. That's why. Last year, 142 carries, 656 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. Excuse me. Got the hiccups. Receiving, he had 30 catches on 43 targets, 233 yards, and 1 touchdown. Keep Trade Cut has him 138 overall, RB 31. Fantasy Pros has him only 5 slots lower at RB 26, but we go from 138 overall to 81st overall. And I've noticed this with pretty much every running back I've had in this series. The Fantasy Pros expert rankings, they love some early running backs. They're like 50 running backs going early. So it's almost, what's that? Almost 50 picks there, almost 60 picks, 57 picks difference, even though he's only 5 slots higher. So RB 26, RB 31, where do you think he falls?
Well, again, I think that nails it for me. I think he's just outside that RB2 kind of range. I think he's in that RB3 territory flex kind of thing. And again, I don't think that's a bad valuation for him. And again, I don't think he's a bad player. I just feel like clearly the sky has hit already for Aaron Jones, and he's tumbling down the charts at this point. I also think it's interesting if you're talking about just from a dynasty perspective, where he's been ADP wise. Overall ADP on DLF right now is right around 100. A year ago, he was sitting pretty at 79, 80, somewhere in there. So he tumbled 20 spots or so in a year. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see that again. I know too, on Fantasy Pros, he's ranked right alongside Austin Eckler, right? Like that's someone else that is just falling. And I was like, that's too easy.
Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, there's Nick Chubb. There's this whole group here of aging guys that I think, even Alvin Kamara, that I think I might have some shares of, because once we get down into this range where you're almost at 100 overall, I'm going to take a shot on a couple of them here and there and just hope, because all I need is, I'm not doing it on a young build, but if I draft Mixon or Eckler at 100th overall and I get 1 year out of them, of 1 year of almost what they've been, like 75% of it, who cares? It's 1 year at 100th overall. So
yeah. Well, and also too, a lot of those names you mentioned a year ago were top 12 running backs, right? Like those are all guys that were right up in that spot. I don't see any of them making it back up to top 12 in a sense of rankings, but they definitely have top 12 upside in terms of performance. And I think that's kind of where you're saying too, is like, I'd rather take a guy who's got 1 or 2 years left on the, on the tires, so to speak, right? Where they don't have a lot of, life left, but they can get 1 more good year. Derrick Henry is another one I considered, but again, that just feels too obvious. And I think a lot of people are with Aaron Jones, especially his catching and receiving game is really what's held his value a lot. And it just seems like with Jordan Love, that didn't come to fruition as much, at least from my vibes. Again, not stats. I've not watched all the tape, so to speak. But I just don't remember Aaron Jones being as involved in when he was on the field. And again, you mentioned it, he wasn't as healthy this year. Yeah. And running backs hit that cliff. And I'll be honest, I hate to say it, but I think Aaron Jones might have hit that cliff. So again, I'm not selling him for nothing, but I'm sure as heck not excited to have him on my roster anymore, which is, again, the sad state of running back in today's dynasty landscape. It's just the way it goes,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think he's hit his cliff. I think a lot of these guys have hit their cliff. Yeah. But like I said, you were drafting him last year in the 2nd round. Now you're drafting him in the 8th round. So even if they don't have top 12 upside, if I can get a back end, if I can get RB 26 in the 10th round, I don't care. That's a flex running back or bye week running back for me all season long. And I forget who it was, but I've seen this on Twitter raging all day. It was centered around Joe Mixon and how he's going to be back. And someone tweeted out, but I don't remember who. He's going to be back and he's going to be a value again. And I think that's true of this whole group, where I'm not really targeting them. But when I get to this range and they all start falling, I'm just like, do I want to take shots on like Najee Harris? I don't have any more faith in Najee. At least these guys have really proven something. Who else is down here? Kendre Miller, Chuba Hubbard, Zamir White. There's no guarantee Zamir White.
It's just getting gross. Oh, yeah.
AJ Dillon, like,
well, that's the kind of spot in Dynasty, especially in startups, where I'm almost always going to the receivers and tight ends at that range, just because the running backs are just gross. You know what I mean? They just all feel like I'm losing value right away. But you said it well too, though. If you're contending or looking for one more year, that's a terrific value. And I think it too, if everyone is zigging, you can zag and grab guys like this and maybe win your league in the first year if you're in a startup and kind of, you know, just go ham, make that money back while everyone else is preparing for next year. Just go win now. I don't have a problem with that either. So again, it's all about balance. It's all about, you know, knowing your league and knowing what you can get. I'd be curious if you could still get a second for Aaron Jones. I kind of doubt it at this point, just because I think so many people are soured on running backs, right? And there's so many of those guys. I just don't know if you could get a second for him, but if you could, I'd probably do that depending on how deep you were and if you were contending. But yeah, he's not the stellar guy we wanted him to be. And just that happens. It's age, man. As someone who's older than everyone we've talked about, I can tell you getting older it's coming for you. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I don't give up on him too early in Dynasty. I don't know how many times last year I had older looking teams where I just said, you know what, 10th round, I don't care. I'll draft a win now team. And I ended up with guys like Thielen and Henry and DeAndre Hopkins. And then, you know, once all the rookie hoopla dies down and you get into the middle of the season, it's like, oh, I have a stacked lineup. Who cares if they're all old? Like, I'm 15 receivers deep here, 15 flex players deep. So at some point, age is a bit overrated. You do have to win the damn thing. And very rarely have I ever seen anyone win with a team of straight up rookies. So,
well, and one other thing, just to kind of mention this, I mentioned him as my faller largely because of all of the stuff we've mentioned, but that doesn't mean you don't want to acquire him, right? If you could send a third and get him, I'd fine with that, because again, he did finish the season 3 straight 100-yard games, right? Like, he's still got some of that tread left, you know, that we hate using, but like, that's basically where this is. Like, it's all about the value for him right now. And at that QB 26 kind of range, you know, I'm fine with him there. It's just, it's not, I'm not surprised that he's in that range. He's definitely fallen off. That's all it is.
Yeah. But the most important thing you said there was the value, because that's what it is. The faller, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as he falls to a range where he's a good value for me, I'll take one last shot at Aaron Jones. I don't want to do it in the 2nd or 3rd round again, but in the 8th round, sure, give me a couple of shots at him. So I'm not going to have him on every single team I have, but, you know, I might have some Joe Mixon here and some Aaron Jones there, but.
Well, those guys are perfect throw-in picks to trades too. Like, you know, kind of put them in, you know, hey, we're close. Throw in Aaron Jones and I'll do it, right? The other guy might say, okay, sure. And that's the kind of stuff, those little things move the needle, right? Thirds close deals. I say it all the time on Junkies. So if Aaron Jones is about that value, Aaron Jones closes deals maybe. You never know. So again, if you're contending, that's someone I'm trying to get, really. But it's still only because the value is so low.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Andrew. You want to take one last shot here? Tell everyone where we can find you again. We only have a few minutes, though, so don't take 7.
I won't take 7. I'll keep it short again. But no, yeah, like I said before, you can find me on Twitter at Andrew Hall FF. Always retweeting my stuff. You can find all the articles I write on Fantasy Pros there. And again, when we do go live with Dynasty Junkies, which we have a rotating host crew with, so I'm not always on that show, but when I'm on there, come by, say hi, you know, stop by in the chat. Anybody's welcome. And we'll, you know, obviously be glad to welcome any Dynasty questions you have. It's my favorite time of year. It's that non-point scoring season. It's all speculation. It's all hope. Everybody's 0-0. It's terrific. It's a good time to be a Dynasty manager.
Those rotating host shows always trip me out. I don't know how many times I told Dave Heilman, I'll watch SGPN tonight. And I'm like, you're not on the show today. You weren't on the show. I must have watched it 30 times. I'm like, are you ever actually on the show? Even Chev on Dynasty, was it Dynasty Rewind he's on? I had a few times where I'm like, Chev, are you not on the show anymore? And so
it's just real life gets in the way. You know, it's nice to have some rotation to it.
It's off season. I know there's no off season for Dynasty players, but it's still off season.
NFL off season. That's still true.
It's not all that important right now. Half the people aren't watching. So, you know, that's what I always said. Someone asked me the other day about tips for new podcasters and that. And I said, don't take it serious during the off season. Network, have some fun, because really the only people seeing your content are the other degenerates making content. You don't have Casual Bob who drafts the last week of August in your Dynasty show in February. So don't take it too serious. Have fun with it. Make some friends.
You're probably right there. That's a good point, Aaron.
So, all right. Well, this concludes another edition of 2024 Dynasty Risers and Fallers, this time with Andrew Hall. Thank you, Andrew, for joining me.
My pleasure.
This has been the Mad Science Lab podcast, hosted by the combination of the Fantasy Football Universe and the Fantasy Football Advice Network. For Aaron and Andrew, thank you for tuning in. Take care, and I'll see you next time.